A very good morning to all the viewers who joined us today to celebrate this Wildlife Week with Indira Gandhi Zoological Park and on this virtual platform. As part of our celebration today, we have a very interesting topic that is birds and birds identification by an eminent speaker, Ms. V. Bhagyashree, who would throw some light on birds identification, which could help the birders, young birders, and learners to have an identification, how to make them easier, how to identify the birds to build up the field in this bird watching. And now I take the privilege to introduce you our speaker, Ms. V. Bhagyashree, who is a member trustee of WCTRE NGO, and she has specialization in birds and the habitat conservation. Also worked earlier with SACON, Coimbatore, as junior research biologist. And during her research work, she made a very extensive touring in 5 different states for surveying and sample collection. And her interests include traveling and carrying out research on various species and to protect their respective habitat. At present, we have Ms. Bhagyashree here in Vizag, and she's carrying various wetland conservation and water body conservation activities, initiatives in protecting the migratory sites of thousands of birds. And now I request Ms. Bhagyashree to share the platform, to take over the platform, and to throw some light on this birds and birds identification, which is a topic for today. Thank you.
So, warm good morning to all the viewers who are logged in to see this topic on discussion today. So, as a first, I would like to wish everybody who's watching this a happy World Wildlife Week 2020. So, this week is celebrated in recognition of the initiatives and hard-working souls who are working to conserve the various wildlife around the world, especially in India. So, happy Wildlife Week to all of you. So I thank the zoo, IGZP Vishakhapatnam for giving me this chance in presenting before you the topic bird and bird identification. So I love birds and I have been studying them for not much years, but very recently, maybe 3 to 4 years. I've been watching them since my childhood, but I have started studying about them and learning about them very recently. So here I am to present before you the topic on how to identify birds, why to study them, and what is their importance in the world around us. So let us start with knowing what are actually birds and so why we are studying them. So coming to the basics of bird studies. So first, we all observe birds all around us every day. At any time, if you see through your window or when you travel outside, you see some or the other birds flying around you. So initially, if we have to describe what are birds, so that will be like they are feathered, they are biped, vertebrates, and warm-blooded. So this is a basic description of how we can describe a bird. So feathered in the sense they have 2 wings. Everybody has noted it. So they are just modifications of forearms of human beings. So we have 2 hands, they have 2 wings. So they use it for flying. So they are biped in the sense that they are having 2 legs, vertebrates as alveoli, and warm-blooded animals. Warm-blooded is nothing but their body temperature remains constant regardless of the climate around them. So this is the general way in which we can describe a bird. Why to study them? So in order to know why to study birds, we should first understand their role in nature. So what are they doing? You can see them eating a fruit around you, or else you can see them hunting a rodent around you. But what is their exact role in the nature? So initially, to see, the most important role is insect control. So there was a study recently done in an agriculture field by researchers who found out if there is no bird around in a particular agriculture field, there will be like millions of insects. So if a bird is there, they will control the population of insects, and thus they help farmers in getting a good yield. So if there are no birds, the insects in themselves will raid the crop and the farmer will be facing a great loss. So insect control is one of the important activities that birds do. And control of vermin is nothing but the same version, but where birds which focus on eating worms and earthworms and all. Scavengers of nature, you can see the top right picture of a vulture sitting next to a skeleton. So you can see that not a piece of meat is sticking onto the skeleton, it is completely cleaned. So this is what scavengers do in nature. So recently, many of the newspapers were flooded with news, not recently, a little bit before, as there was a very rapid decline in vulture population around the world. This was especially because of the pharmaceutical drug called diclofenac. So the buffaloes and cows were administered with the drug, and it led to the consumption. When the vultures were consuming the dead carcasses of cows, they died eventually because of an overdose of this drug. So when they are not in our vicinity, when their population comes down, the main effect that has is stinking cities where there is no vulture or any scavengers to control or to clear off the carcasses around us. So it starts stinking, and then the dead bodies are becoming host for many viruses and bacteria. So it leads to disease spread around the city. So scavengers of nature, they play a very important role in cleaning the city, cleaning the nature and keeping it healthy. Seed dispersers, so there are many birds where, like example, hornbills. So they are known to be farmers, like farmers of the forest. They are called as farmers of the forest because they are voracious feeders of fruits around the forest trees. And because of this, they play an important role in dispersing their seeds in various parts of the forest. So this is how propagation happens. So, and then manure supplies. So this is something that is less explored in India, but there are farms in foreign lands where farmers use manure in the form of, which is birds' excreta. So they collect it and they use it for their farming works. And then pollinators. So here you can see the bottom left picture of a hummingbird, which has just sucked nectar out of this bird. And you can see yellow color pollen on its beak. So this is how they are pollinating. So next, this bird will go to another bird, another flower, and try to suck in nectar from there. So indirectly, it is depositing this pollen into that flower. So in this way, they are contributing to nature in very many different ways. Another one important wondering attribute about birds is their foraging gills. So the photographs here and the list of gills that I have presented here are the same. So there is an example for every gill that I have given here. So foraging gill is nothing but a number of specific number of birds or animals that feed on the same type of food. They are put into the same guild, a particular guild. So there are different gills such as nectivorous, granivorous, frugivorous, insectivorous, piscivorous, carnivorous, omnivorous, and scavenger birds. So nectivorous are those which feed on nectars, like how I said, example, hummingbird. Granivorous example is a sparrow, which is adapted to eating grains and such items. And frugivorous birds, example, parakeet, which feeds on mainly fruits. Pigeons, doves also we can see eating fruits. And insectivorous birds are those which has their main diet filled with insects. They catch a lot of insects in the wild, And piscivorous, for example, you can see a heron with a fish in its beak. So their main diet is constituted of fishes. You can see them near water bodies like egrets and herons. And then carnivorous, everybody would have seen one or the other bird catching a rat in its arm and flying away. So this is a carnivorous bird. This is called a shikara. And omnivorous, best example will be a crow, where it is adapted to eating anything that is available. So it is man's best friend right now in the current scenario. So even if you give meat, it will eat. If you give it rice, it will eat that also. So they are omnivorous in nature. Scavengers, as we already seen, vulture is the best example for a scavenger. So now that you see any habitat that you take in the world, there will definitely be one or two birds present in them. So this is why it makes them a perfect tool to study the condition of the environment in which we are living in. So they become indicators of any problem that arises in any kind of habitat. So learning them and their activities and their reason for their death and survival gives us the condition or status of how our environment is. So the reason why we study them, scientifically speaking, they are like litmus papers. So they react very fast to changes. So if there is a pollution in a lake where pesticides have been released unknowingly, definitely the fishes and the bird that feed on those fishes will die immediately. So that is an indication because they immediately respond to any small change. But in other words, there are also cases where birds have seen to be adapting to changes in the environment. A best example would be, I would like to quote here about kingfishers. So people would have seen kingfishers near water bodies trying to catch fishes, small fishes and big fishes. But their name tells us that it is a kingfisher. So it is main diet is composed of fish. But I bet many of you would have seen photographs floating in social media and internet where a kingfisher is seen to be eating a garden lizard nowadays. Why is that? Because of course there are very less water bodies to feed on right now, forage on right now, and there are more garden lizards available. So it is adapting to the changes in the nearby scenarios. And on aesthetic terms, when we talk why to study birds, one of the things is it will make you get up early out of bed, which is even healthier for you. The vibrant colors of birds keep your mind and soul healthy and active all the time. And it becomes a kind of a hobby where it makes you learn more and more about them each and every day. So today you go and see a bird, you see it vanishing into a bush. So you will be automatically interested that tomorrow you again want to go there and see whether the bird is nesting there or whether its activity is restricted to that area or it goes outside for feeding and foraging. So that sparks an interest in you and you want to learn more and more per day. So how I can relate it to Indian serials that go on in TVs nowadays. 8 o'clock, it will be end. So the hero has met with an accident and only tomorrow you will get to know what happened more. So the next day, 8 o'clock, you are glued to your seat watching the TV to learn what happened. It's almost the same. You create a hobby out of this bird watching and then the next day you make sure that you go there. So that is how this is important in aesthetic terms. So coming to how to identifying the birds into groups. So I have made this presentation in such a way that even beginners can make use out of it, and even those people who have already started bird watching very recently in their life, they can also make use of this presentation. So a basic thing about bird watching is that before you start, you have to know the basic body parts of a bird. So how will you describe anything that you see in the wild? You compare it, or else you give a specific detail about that particular item that you want to get identified. So when it comes to a bird, you definitely have to know at least the basic parts that are defining the bird morphology. So for example, if you take this head region, there are minimum of 5 regions that are being marked here. So this is a forehead. This is called a lobe. This point is called a lobe. This is called a crown, and this is a supercilium, and these are the ear coverts. So you just can't say blatantly that the head was orange in color and there was a black line. No, you have to mention it that this was in such a way and this part was colored in such a way. And when it comes to the lower region, you can see there are 3 parts. There is a throat. This region is called a breast, and this region is generally termed as belly region. So these 3 parts cannot be single termed as belly, because there are many birds, especially like flycatcher species, where the throat will be in one color, the breast will be in another color, and the belly will be totally in another color. So when you are trying to jot down in your notebook, this was the color of this part, you need to know what is that part, so that you can tell it to the bird watcher senior or a friend or a colleague that this part was in this color. So this is a very basic map that gives you the basic identification pointers on the morphology of a bird. So once you get to know, once you learn the basics like this, next we can step into a detailed way of studying them and identifying them. So there are different factors on which you can use to identify them. So the first one will be the size of the bird. So noting down the size of a bird, for example, out of context, we'll see you are in the person is in a classroom and the teacher is coming inside. They want to take the height of everybody. She doesn't have a measuring tape. She just has to define what height you are at. So what she will do, she'll either tell, okay, Samrita is taller than Yashaswini, or then you are shorter than that person. So they compare. So it is easier to define something when you have something to compare it with. So what can you compare with? So one bird which is very, very, very prevalent in any area is a crow. Everybody would have seen a crow from their childhood at any one point of time. So you can take a crow, for example, you can keep it as a comparison point. So easiest ways to compare the size of a well-known bird like crow, myna, bulbul, pigeon, dove or sunbird, which are prevalent in your area. So for example, you can say a drongo is larger than a bulbul but smaller than a dove. So this narrows the area into which the size of the bird can be defined. So for example, I have representation, I have given few photographs here. So this photograph on the right top shows the comparison between the size of a pigeon and a sparrow. So both the birds in the same frame shows what is the scale of difference of the size. Similarly, below there is a roller and a drongo here, and then a roller and a bee-eater here. So it defines the difference in shape, size, so which is going to be useful in describing a bird. Next, coming to the color as a factor. So you can define as to whether the entire bird was only one color it was there, or different parts of the bird body had different colors, whether it was very bright or very pale in nature. And in some cases, you have to mention size and color together, because there are birds where juvenile birds will be having a different color, and the adult birds of the same species will be completely different in morphology and color. And color difference during nesting and breeding season also happens in birds. For beginners, these may not be taken into consideration, but due course when during birding, you'll understand that birds have different plumages during different seasons. So for example, here you see bottom left is a egret, which is completely white in color. You mentioned this as completely white. Whereas you see this one, this is a oriole, where its nape is one color, its forehead is another color, its wings have two different colors, and its beak is in light pink color. So this is how you use color as a factor to describe the bird. Next, coming to the beak type. So different birds have different beak types depending on the foraging specifications that they have. So this is one other attribute which can be used to categorize birds into foraging guild. Like I mentioned before, nectivorous, granivorous, frugivorous birds. So those birds have different types of beaks. So here you see a sparrow, which is a seed eater, whose bill is very thick in nature. And when it comes to an insect eater, on the right side top, you can see a bird which has a very sharp beak, and it is like sword. So which is very useful in pricking the insect and catching it particularly and consuming them. And if you see down, there is a black-eyed juvenile photograph whose beak is pointed. So it is like a hook. This structure is very important to eat meat properly, to tear them into pieces and eat them. So their beak is modified in accordance to that necessity. And then come the generalist section, where like crows and gulls and all will be there, who forage on different kinds of food. So their beak is modified according to that. So beak type is another factor which can be noted down to understand how to describe a bird. So apart from these three important factors, there are a few other minor factors which can be noted down, such as the first one to be a distinguishing factor. So you can see this bird on the top right. This is a common hoopoe. So you can see a beautiful crown on top of its head, which is very unique to that particular bird. So anywhere in the world you see this bird, it is common whoopie because this structure differentiates it from other birds. So this is a distinguishing feature in this bird. Another one common example is a peafowl. You can see a peafowl with a male having a big tail feather and it will spread its wing during monsoon season. So that particular feature is particular to peacock only. So like that, if your bird has some distinguishing feature, you can note it down to describe it. Male female differences. So here you see bottom right corner, there is a sparrow. So the right one is a male and the left one is a female. So you can see the plumage differences in both the birds. So male will be different and female will have different plumage. So this can also be noted down. Calls. So calls is another factor which can be used to describe a bird. So various birds, every different bird has a different call in this world. And there is a separate wing of ornithology, the study of birds, contributing and focusing on study of bird calls, which is called bird acoustics. So that's a wonderful field. Any of you interested can contact me later to know more about it. There are institutes giving courseworks on this. So it's a very important and interesting way to learn birds. Activity, style of flying, behavior. These three are nothing but what the birds were doing when you were observing them, whether they were foraging, trying to find food, or feeding their chicks, or playing with other members of the pack, or flying, all these things. Style of flying is also another one attribute which can be used to identify birds. So during flight, the bird will be different and it can be easily identified. And habitat is one other important attribute. So the next slides, I'll be showing you how to note down birds during bird watching. In that, date, place, time, and habitat is a compulsory attribute that has to be written every time. So this bottom left photograph is of a cattle egret group. It's an egret group. So this single photograph has 2 to 3 types of egrets, an Asian open bill stock. So to a trained eye, it is visible. But for beginners, this is a group of egrets foraging near a water body. So this habitat is that of a stream or a water body kind of place. So this is important in defining the bird. So these are ways in which a bird can be described. So coming to another important aspect as to when is the best time to study birds or to observe birds. So best time will be that during when the sun rises till mid-morning. For example, if the sun is rising at 6 o'clock in the morning, bird activity will be seen from around 5:30 to 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and some birds will still be active during the day. So the main activity can be observed during sunrise until mid-morning, and even during dusk, before the sun is setting, 1 or 2 hours prior to that, birds can be seen active and they'll be rushing up to their nests and all. So these both times are the best when it comes to studying them or observing their activity. So this is for people who do it as a hobby or just out of interest and or to learn them and their activity. But there are other aspects like such as behavioral and habitat studies by scholars or students of college and school students. For if you need to learn about the behaviors and all, continued observations from dawn to dusk of that particular bird is important. So these are the ways in which studying birds has a particular time and which has to be stuck to. So coming to the next aspect of bird watching. So before you start bird watching, an important thing that you should have in your hand is binoculars. So it is called as a bird watcher's companion. So finding the right binocular is a very difficult task. So it is very easy to search online, okay, this is nice, that is nice. But when it comes to buying it, you get a bit confused because you don't know which is going to be the best. So the best way to avoid all this confusion is going to a shop, trying to use it once and trying to zoom it properly and then see which is handy to you, because every person has a different way of feeling to different things. So it is a must visit to a optic showroom before buying one. So you also have to understand the different numbers. So they tell what is the dimension of a binocular, what is it? So they say 8 by 32 or 10 by 40. What is this 8? What is this 40? So the first number means magnification, and 32 means the second number means the diameter of the lens. So you have to see which is beneficial for you. That doesn't mean 12 by 50 is going to be the best binocular. So with higher magnification becomes lower diameter, lower area of focus. So you have to buy a binocular based on the area where you are trying to study birds also. For example, the in photograph of this is a monoscope, which is also called as a spotting scope. This is for long distance birding. For example, if you are interested in aquatic birds more than terrestrial birds, you need to go to a place like a lake or a wetland habitat, and you have to see birds which are at a very far distance. So in that condition, you have to make sure that you have a spotting scope in hand, which is going to make it easier to spot the birds which are in a very far distance. So then now you know how to describe them, how to see them, and where to see them. So the next comes how to find out their names or how to identify them properly. So there are books, hard copy and soft copy that is available. So these are two guides which are prevalent in India. So which is very useful, very basic and helpful for any kind of birding levels. So these are both are available in any online apps like Flipkart or Amazon. This is very good, and even your local library might have. And there are copies of this book in IGZB library also, if you wish to refer sometime when you come after post zoo reopening. But on a general note, my suggestion for beginners of birding would be to refer these two books, which are having a collection of common birds that are found in your neighborhood. So it is very easier for you to go through and find the name of the particular bird in these books. And when you go through these books and you are pro in this, then when you go to those two books, it will be very easier for you. So the additional identification pointers and all will be useful at that time. So once you start studying birds, there will be confusion among certain species and all. So there are pointers which will help you in describing and to point out between the subspecies. So you know that for example, in this slide, these two are parakeets. So just looking at their face, you can know that it is a parakeet. But then describing them into their subspecies or species level is a little bit difficult when it is in a little bit distant or any faraway place. So they call some identification features, some called as pointers, are prevalent among birdwatching communities. So pointer is nothing but a particular feature which will help you to corner into describing a bird into a species level. So for example, Alexandrine parakeet on the left side has a maroon patch on its shoulder, which is missing in the rose-ring parakeet. So this patch, if it is present, it is a Alexandrine parakeet. So this is how pointers are made use of in the further course of bird watching to fix which species or subspecies the bird belongs to. Coming to urban birds. So now you have seen in general how to identify bird, where to see them and all. So coming to urban birds. So we are all in a jam-packed city, sitting in our windows and trying to find some birds in our neighborhood. So you find some birds here, and most of them are called as urban birds. Why? Because they are in close association with humans, and they have developed a codependent relationship with human beings. So they are not partially dependent on us, we are partially dependent on them. So here you can see a representative image of a barn owl, which was taken in Vizag. This was taken in an apartment terrace. And similarly, on the left side, you can see a flock of pigeons being fed on a terrace top, which makes them codependent because they are dependent on us now because they are getting food from us. We do it as an act of love, compassion, and affection, whereas it is actually detrimental to our health and their population. So urban birds, studying urban birds is important to know how it is affecting us and how it is affecting the wild populations also. So how to study them? For that, something called backyard birding is done. This is done since many ages, but then during this COVID-19 lockdown, backyard birding became very famous because that is all bird watchers could do. We were restricted to go outside and all. So because of safety and precaution measures, we were doing backyard birding more than outside birding, outdoor birding. Nothing but sitting in your window, sitting in your balcony and identifying whatever you can through calls or through using binoculars or photo cameras. So this is how anybody can start watching birds in their home, in their office, in their school. So anywhere you are, you just look around, you can find minimum 2 or 3 birds. That is how you initiate your birding schedules. So I've just given a small collage of very common birds that are found in our backyard. So like dove species, sparrows, crows, sunbirds, babblers, drongos and all. So these are all in detail given in the two small books that I have given, that Birds of Our Neighborhood and 100 Common Birds of India. So that two books will help you very nicely in getting through it. Here I've given to few species in full zoom to explain you how the structure looks like, how their beak looks like, what they eat, what they do, where they are found and all. So you can see a black kite soaring here. So this is why I said, how I said, flying patterns are also helpful in describing a bird. Now you can see a kite completely, a complete wingspan of the black kite can be seen. So the number of times they flap their wings, they glide. So that also can help in defining a bird. And so when you are in field, so you are observing a bird, how to note it down, where to note it down, and what is there any particular method to do it. So in generally, you will just create a rough sketch of rough data entry, what is the type of bird that you saw. If you know the name, you can write a very general name, and then you can say whether it is a male or female depending on the plumage. Date and time and place is compulsory for every bird. And where section you can even write exactly where it was, like maybe perched on a tree top or sitting on a cable wire, so anything like that. But this is just a representative chart. You can create your own noting pads and you can create your own noting sheets. So these images down on the left and right corners are typical examples of a beginner's guide to noting down birds and how to describe them. So you just draw a overall structure of the bird. It might be any way. You might be a very good drawer or not. You might be a very good sketcher or not. It doesn't matter here. This is only to see which area is in which color. So here you can see the person who drew this. He has written gray, black all over, and light colored necks, and then a white belly, and then a light pink beak, seed eater beak. So during flight, there was a white outer tail feathers. So these features or these particular pointers will help very much in identifying the bird species up to species level. So this is how on field, you write or you jot down what you see in front of you. So see, there is also date, year, and see the behavior he has written. I saw a group eating seeds in front of my house. It's very simple. It doesn't need any big study course or anything to do this. It's very simple. What you see, you just jot it down. So you kind of maintain a diary over a period of time. So that will help you in revisiting your records and see, okay, today this bird came. I saw this bird few days back. When was that? So you can find the date when it came. So in between where it went. So that is how you start questioning yourself and trying to learn more about them. So, and in recent times, there are many technological applications such as eBird and iNaturalist app that helps in documenting bird sightings in real time. So one of the features of eBird is that you can even upload photographs, and if you have any behavioral observations done on field, you can write them also. Maybe the bird was nesting, there were already chicks that hatched and the parents were feeding the chicks. All these observations can be written there. Bird calls can also be recorded and fed into the system. So all this data will be used by researchers and scientists all over the world to understand better about the population of that particular species and their activities and their trends, whether they are declining in number or they are abundant in number, whether they need to be conserved or not. So that is how. And this is a very important thing that I cannot miss to tell here. So there are some do's and don'ts during bird watching. So the first and foremost point is that you have to be patient. You have to be very patient while bird watching. So it doesn't happen just in 10 minutes or anything. You have to sit and observe them. And you have to keep your distance from the place where the birds are. Be at a very safe distance. You do not disturb them. They are in their habitat. So always keep in mind that we are venturing to their habitat and we want to learn them. They are not coming to our place. So always keep in mind that you are venturing there and you have to keep your distance. You should not disturb them. And there is a habit of placing feeders for using filled with grains for birds to feed them, or with a bowl of water. So make sure that if you're doing all these things in your garden, the place where you keep the feeder is not accessible by your pet dog or pet cat, because then the bird will become its dinner. So make sure that that is not happening. And can also use technology such as birding apps and try to avoid social media, which is becoming a menace in the current times where the location is shared and the bird is being poached. Many attributes are there. In a small mistake, it can lead to big repercussions. And most important one is do not try stylish dresses to birding outings. This is important because birds, butterflies, wild animals have a different kind of vision rather than human beings. So you just don't go out wearing fluorescent color green or red color top and using a wonderful hat or anything. Try to blend in with the place where you are going for birding so that the wildlife there is not disturbed by your presence, and you try to camouflage with them. And some bare essentials for birding might be like shoes and a cap and a binocular. And definitely, this one point needs to be mentioned here. Pre-discuss sign languages to use before starting your birding session. This is important because for even I was like this when I started birding. So to be frank, when I see a new bird in my area, and I'm in a birding trip with a few people, so I try to express my emotion. So the first human instinct will be to shout, "Hey, I saw this bird. Come watch here." So that should not be done. So over time you'll understand this. So as a pre-tip, I'm giving you this. Do not shout when you are in the vicinity of the bird. It will get disturbed and maybe it might not visit that place anymore again. Pre-discuss sign languages. So when you spot a new bird, how to tell it to your co-bird watchers. Or when you are trying to follow a bird, how to tell it to your bird watchers without disturbing the bird. So discuss sign languages before you venture out. And these are all don'ts. Don't do this. Avoid unethical means of photography using playback calls or using baits. So there are many cases around the world where they do something unethical to get the bird out of the nesting area or breeding area to get a good photograph of the bird. That is not ethical. You are disturbing the bird. So it is something out of selfishness that becomes selfish. Take your rubbish home. Of course, when you go to birding early in the morning, 6 o'clock, and you return home at 10 o'clock, you're definitely going to get hungry. You take a bottle of water or a pack of snacks. Make sure you bring all that rubbish back home and put it in your dustbin, not in the place where the birds are living, because birds have a habit of picking up trash and trying to feed them to their chicks or building nesting materials out of them, which is unsafe for them. So take the rubbish back home. Do not use flash photography and do not venture near for the nest to the nest for fledglings or hatchling photography, which is very bad in nature because it will lead to disruption of their cycle, and maybe the fledgling might not survive to see the next day. So indirectly you are actually contributing to the decline of the species. So do not do all these things when we are out bird watching. And make sure that your data is recorded in applications such as eBird and iNaturalist, because as I already told, these data are used by researchers. So this is one evidence in front of your eyes. This is a state of India's birds, a report that was formed and released to the public during the recent convention. And it is actually the first comprehensive assessment of the distribution range, trends, and conservation status of most of the India's birds that occur in India. So how was this report formed? That is the most interesting point. Data from over 15,500 bird watchers uploaded to eBird was collected, and it was curated by over 140 volunteering editors. So this is how this report was formed. So this gives an in-real data of the present condition or current scenario of the population of various birds in our country and how we need to start acting towards conserving them. So this is how your normal morning 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. bird watching data can help in conserving that particular species in real time. So how to streamline your bird watching into data for research? This is such a very small example. You can just see the photographs here. So this is a Taylor bird. So many gardens, many people in their household have seen this bird build a nest. So they build a nest with using two big leaves. They stitch it together, and in between them they lay the eggs and chicks hatch. So you can just observe this. This is more than enough to identify or start your bird watching habit. So select a bird habitat near your area, within your home, in your garden or near your office campus, anywhere. Select a particular species or a habitat and try to learn more about them in detail. This is how you inculcate the habit and patience to learn more and observe more. False data. So here comes another important aspect. Do not submit reports or bird sightings that you did not actually do in real time. Never report a bird that you did not see. Do not steal photographs. Even if you do, if you have to take photographs for any use, you ask the particular person, or at least you give copyrights to them at the end of your report or anywhere. Do not fake the locations of migratory birds, because there are almost like lakhs and millions of people sitting and studying the behavior and routes of migratory birds in this world. So one small mistake in your data might lead to a big collapse in the entire analysis system. And do not create extra checklists to gain popularity. Checklists and registrations in eBirds are only for research and notings. It is not a sport. Bird watching is a calm and peaceful activity, so it is not a sport. Please do not make it one. So how to initiate? So here I've given two posters, which was done early in this year during February, where something called a Great Backyard Bird Count will be conducted every year. So here, millions of people, thousands of people come together to observe the birds in their society or in their nearby community, and they upload this status and upload these checklists, which are in turn used by the researchers and analysts. So participate in bird walks. So there might be universities which are holding bird walks in their campus, or any organizations which are holding bird walks. So try to get in touch with them, become a member of the bird watching club, and interact with such people. So similar-minded people, similar-minded conversations will help you learn more. Teach and spread. You can teach this same attribute, same activity to your friends or parents. So inculcate the habit in your house and community. So I know many friends of mine whose entire family is devoted to bird watching. So their entire garden is molded in such a way that birds find very safe, and they are at peace. And the people of the house also have safe spots from where they can observe the birds. They do not disturb them at all. But you have a spot in your house from where it is visible. So that is enough. We just have a binocular. We just have to observe them. So birds are not going to become dogs. We can't cuddle them. So they are best when they are left at wild. So you can observe them very neatly, and you can learn a lot from their behavior. So inculcate this habit and try to spread. So you can start bird watching today. I hope at least few of you who are watching will start. So any details you can contact me. Any details regarding basic bird identification or bird watching tips. So again, as I told, post the zoo reopening, there might be bird walks in the campus. So you can keep in touch with Indira Gandhi Zoological Park and their website for more details on that. So thank you all for viewing and watching this presentation on basics of birds and bird identification. So I'm very glad that I got this opportunity. I thank Indira Gandhi Zoological Park, its curator, Dr. Nandini Saleria Madam, and staff and friends for giving me this opportunity. So thank you a lot. See you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Bhagishri. That was a very wonderful presentation, and it's really a spellbound presentation, informative, loaded, and encapsulated. I think for the laying highlighting the fundamentals of the birds and bird watching. And as you have already said, every time we are always free for a good discussion. And in Indira Gandhi Zoological Park, we do have the aviaries where you can start watching the birds, and then to learn more and to go ahead in this field of bird watching. And with this, on this, we heartily congratulate, and then we heartily congratulate, and we are thankful to Ms. Bhagishri for her wonderful presentation. And tomorrow we have a session on zoo volunteers launching program, and please do join us. And already we have volunteers who are working for the welfare of our zoo. And we also request the viewers to participate and to show some interest, who are already have shown some interest in wildlife conservation, and to go ahead with hand in hand with Indira Gandhi Zoological for the cause of conservation of our wildlife. So we'll meet tomorrow at the same time at 11:30 to 12:30 with a zoo volunteer launching program. Please do join us. Until then, stay safe, and conserve nature. Thank you.